Okay, so welcome out. We'd like to, first of all, thank Ancestry for hosting us tonight. Thanks, Dan. And thank you, Ancestry. This is my first time up here at this location, so let's give them a round of applause. Dan says he doesn't have room in his car for the pizza, so if you need some, continue to eat. So just real quick, we don't have any announcements tonight, but we are getting our next meetups all put together. We kind of do sporadic. We'll do one November, well, probably December time period, but we like to make them good. So be looking for that. New element that we've added to this is Brad Stone here. He's done an awesome job for us. He set up this whole video camera up here to get it recorded. So we need to give Brad a big round of applause. So Dan's going to be recorded, and we'll post this on the meetup group. We'll Slack it out, and we'll also tweet it out. So you'll have a link to that. And for those that are joining remotely, you can ask questions when we do our Q&A session. So this is a fun element we're hoping to continue going forward. So besides that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So Dan, we'll give it up to you, and again, thank you for hosting us here.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate that. And thank you all for coming out and being here. I sure appreciate it. It's way more interesting to have you here than just to stand and talk and do the presentation. I was just thinking to the last time, I guess it wasn't the last time, but a couple times ago, I gave a big presentation in our company meeting, and I actually had my team sneak cowbells in to the audience. And I said, wait, when I get on stage, you got to stand, you get do the cowbell. So one guy on my team who's not here tonight, which may be good, I don't know, but he, I step out on the stage and he stands up with his cowbell in the middle of the audience. He's like, so if you feel that enthusiastic, that's fine. I won't be offended, but it's not required. So it'd be great. And I just want to, I want to echo the thanks. Thank you for, Brandon, everybody, and Riley for being super helpful in facilitating the opportunity to do this. I'm really excited. It's a topic that I've been wanting to talk about as I think about these. Whoa, if I turn my head that way, it's really loud. As I think about the meetups, I thought, if I'm going to do a topic, I want to do something a little more advanced maybe, right? Like a lot of the meetup conversations we have are skills, which are super useful as product managers. I've never heard anybody talk about not what it takes to be a product manager, but what it takes to lead product managers, what it takes to grow a team, what it takes to build a team. Which I think is generally applicable, because even if you're a product manager, you still have to use those same skills to work with the team that you're working with, right? It applies the whole spectrum of product management, from somebody super senior leading a large organization all the way down to the very entry-level product manager. So as we step into this, I also wanted to point out the people at Ancestry that helped. They conveniently disappeared, but we got Jed up here doing our technology stuff, Linda Herbert, an admin for us, Susie Jessen, and then Doris O'Brien, who are on our talent team. Which, by the way, if you're interested in exploring opportunities at Ancestry, Doris is waving her hand. Would be anxious to talk. As we get started on the topic, I wanted to invite you to do one thing. Usually, you get distracted by your phone. I'm going to trust you to not be too distracted, but I'm going to invite you to go to your phone, go to the App Store, and find a new app Ancestry released recently called We're Related. And maybe some of you already have it. If you do, you're awesome. And by the end of the night, you'll all be awesome because you'll all have it. It's a free app, and toward the end, we'll just play with it for a second. So, and you're welcome to play with it ahead of time, but get it, download it, get it up and going, and we'll have a fun time with it. So as we step into this, 2 is not my favorite number, but 2 is the number of challenges that I want to talk about tonight. And so the first of these challenges that I think kind of tie into this whole leading and growing, whatever, is this problem, which is when you are leading product managers, sometimes the very attributes that make a great product manager also make that person very hard to lead. And I wanted to, we'll tease that out a little bit, talk about that a little bit tonight. The second challenge I want to talk through is this one, which is, and the reason I'm putting this together, and we'll talk about why, but I think these are actually really tightly related on how you solve for them. The second challenge is, as if you have a product management team, and if you are not helping and actively helping those individuals to grow and to get better and to advance in their careers, you're probably going to lose them, All right, so there's this problem of how do you grow and mature them and help them, fulfill what they want to do, which is become better at their craft and at their trade. And so as we talk about these, I wanted to have a conversation around the first one, around what I was saying about that those great attributes of product managers are also sometimes a problem in being able to lead those product managers. So pull out your phone, text Ancestry to 22333, and let's build a word cloud around this question to facilitate a conversation. So the question is this. Hopefully it'll work. If it doesn't work, I don't know what's going to happen. Okay. So the question is this, which is, what is an attribute of a great product manager? So let's just see what word cloud comes out of this. If you guys start putting in if you think of the best product manager, what are some of their attributes? And let's see if this will build out for us. Feels like I should tell a joke or something while we're waiting for the word cloud to come up. And if the word cloud, well, smart, okay, there we go. So somebody figured out how to text 22333. And maybe it's just like time delayed, I don't know. A little bit of delay. Curious, love that one, okay. Analytical, okay, we're getting some ones. Persistent. It's like I can call these out as you text them, and that's amazing. We must have 2 bullets for analytical, 2 bullets for curious. Now you guys are dogpiling. Are you dogpiling, or are you still keeping your own perspective? Fun, smart questioning, strategic, multitasker, confident, persuasive, multitasker. So let's build out a little bit. Empathetic, like that one. Driven, good one. A player, team. Data eager. It's really hard to read when it keeps shifting on us. So, but we'll let it keep building a little bit. And so, as you guys are looking at this, let me ask you guys a question. I'll start the dialogue with you, and we can take the mic around, or I can just repeat the question. But the question I have for you is, as you look at these attributes, if these are attributes, think of these attributes and think about that statement I made, which is sometimes these attributes make people hard to lead. So do you see any of these attributes where you look at it and you're like, yeah, I can see how somebody who had that attribute might actually be it might become a challenge in how you lead that person. Did any of those jump out to you as you think about that? Anybody want to be the first person in the water? Confident, right? Depending on how they manage that, right? But somebody who's super confident may not be willing to be led, right? Okay. Other thoughts about any attributes that stick out that way? A leader. Yeah, so somebody who's a leader themselves is I kind of want to go lead, right? So that can be problematic. Other ones that stick out, Derek? Yeah, so inquisitive is a great attribute until you're on the other side of that, and you're like, can't you just go do it? Right? Hopefully that's never the conversation, but that can be a challenge. Other thoughts on this? And we're not forced to go any extended period of time, but think about that. And let me tell you a story while you're thinking about it, which is I once, as a product manager, I had a boss. I don't even remember what it was. He felt it was very important for me to fill out a report every week that he wanted so that he could then share that status up the chain with his boss. And this may give you too much insight into my soul, but I looked at that report and could not for the life of me figure out what it had to do with being successful at the project I was working on. And so he said, hey, I need you to do this report. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And he was like, no, I really need you to do the report. And I said, yeah, I'm really not going to do it. Which, by the way, I don't encourage that behavior. This was early in my career. I'm way smarter about how I approach things. But the point there is, at that point in my career, I was actually probably a very hard person to lead, right? I was a little unwilling to follow the mentoring and the coaching of this person. And as you look at some of these, like some of these really positive, like adapted, that's great. A people person, that's great. But you get people who are independent. You want product managers to be independent, but that can be hard to lead. You want product managers to be driven. You want them to be curious. You want them all these things, but it can make them hard to lead. And so that doesn't make them bad product managers, by the way. It actually makes them great product managers. So the question is, how do you navigate that? And so we go forward. By the way, thank you for that. So we'll come back to that because I want to tee up the next part, which is the growth part. right? And so, and remember, I believe that the solution to leading and growing are really intertwined. So as we talk about what it takes to grow a product manager, the first thing that I've noticed as I've tried to grow product management teams and talk to people is this thing, which is you have to create a safe environment for the growth. You have to somehow establish with the product manager that you're trying to lead that it's actually safe to talk about where the gaps are, that it's actually safe to talk about where they could get better, and it's safe to talk about where they're great, right? Like you need to have some kind of common ground where that becomes not just a safe conversation, but a welcome conversation and an ongoing conversation. And so one of the things that I have used over the years that's been very effective, and by the way, this conversation is meant to be like participatory. So if I like say something, you're like, hey, that gives me an idea I want to share, please do. It'd be great. I'm going to share some things that have worked well for me. I'm not sharing all things that have worked well for me, nor am I believing that these are the only approaches. So I'm trying to stimulate conversation. But there's this thing. Anybody heard of this conscious competence model? People that work for me have. Good, because I told you about it, didn't I? You probably know about it before then because you're so smart, right? So this conscious competence model, let me show you how, let me introduce it to you a little bit. It's like if you go Google that, you'll learn a bunch about it. It's actually really effective. It's a model that describes how people develop skill, right? How they become better or something. And the way the model works, and I tried to put an illustration so you can like recognize somebody who is in one of these 4 quadrants. So the first quadrant down here is called unconscious incompetence, right? Somebody who is unconsciously incompetent, like your first day on the job, right? You kind of show up and you're like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm happy to be here. Just point me in the right direction, right? That is unconscious incompetence. People quickly move from unconscious incompetence to the next quadrant, which is conscious incompetence. People who are consciously incompetent are very frustrated, right? Nobody likes to know that you suck, right? Like, that's not a good place to be. And hitting that wall and having that realization. By the way, this applies broadly. Like, if you think about like consumer products and people who are trying to understand your product, as soon as they reach a point of conscious incompetence in your product, they're gone. And so it applies more broadly. But in here, like when you have an employee, or if you have a product manager, if there's somebody on an engineering team, you're asking them to do something, they realize, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to do the thing my product manager just asked me how to do. This is what they look like. So if you ever see somebody that looks like that, you know they've hit conscious incompetence. The third quadrant over here is conscious competence, right? So conscious competence, it's like, hey, I know I'm competent, and I know I'm competent, and I have to think about it to be competent, right? And so it's like I can walk in the picture, but I need somebody to still kind of help me, coach me. This is a heavy coaching area, right? Where I know how to do it, but I still kind of need support and a little bit of guidance to be good at it. And then this fourth quadrant down here is a thing called unconscious competence. Unconscious competence is like, you know what, I drive to work every day. Most of the time, I don't even remember how I got there. And I didn't get in an accident, it's fine. Right, like that is unconscious competence, and that's where you want to get to with any skill, right? You want to get to a point where like it just happens so naturally that you don't even have to think about it. That's where you want your team to get to, right? That's when you have highly capable people, because somebody who is unconsciously competent, you don't even have to give them much direction. You just say, go conquer that mountain, report back when you've conquered it, right? Like that is the ultimate in kind of a product manager who's really attained high skill in something. Now, the thing I'll tell you about in this model, one is like ideally you go that way through the model. It is actually possible to go backwards to the model. I don't want to go deep on that, but if if you're interested in this, go dig deeper. If you mismanage somebody, there's a management style which is appropriate for each of those quadrants. I don't have time to get into that. But if you mismanage somebody in one of these quadrants, you can actually push them backwards through the model, which is fascinating to me. So it's worth looking at if this is of interest to you. But the point is, like, you should go that way through the model. You should try and get through that second quadrant, the conscious incompetence, as fast as you can. And then, get people over its right side. The other thing is that people don't fit in these boxes. Skill fits in these boxes, right? I can be unconsciously competent at one thing and consciously incompetent at another. It's very much a skill by skill, which is why it's so important to establish that open, safe place to be able to talk about how I'm doing on a skill by skill basis, right? Just because I don't understand one thing doesn't mean I'm not awesome at another thing. So that's kind of the concept there. It's been super helpful to me to be able to then have conversations to help people grow and learn and get better faster. The second thing that I really want to adapt that has been very effective at helping people. Anybody read this book by Daniel Pink, a book called Drive? Some of you have read it. Fascinating book. It really kind of debunks and challenges a whole bunch of old thinking around motivational behavior and sets up a new way to think about it. I'm going to save you, by the way, I would encourage you to read the book. If you have kids, you will regret all of your choices up until this point in time with raising your kids. But read the book. It's awesome. And then if you don't read the book, this is what the book says. The book says that in a work environment, you should take compensation off the table, meaning you should make sure somebody's compensation is at a point where it's no longer part of the conversation. Then you should focus on making sure that person can attain mastery, that they have autonomy, and that they feel purpose in their work. And if you do that, that person will go and be happy and thrive and grow. So I want to take that and give examples, and feel free to give feedback and comments if thoughts come up about how you do that. So let's start with this thought of mastery, right? Like, how do you provide an opportunity for a product manager or somebody you're working with to try to grow, to feel that sense of mastery and accomplishment and progress on things? So a few ideas. The first one is it's super important to have what I call right-sized challenges. Have any of you ever had an experience where you've been asked to do something that was so large and so big and so complex compared to what you felt you could do, that you just wanted to give up out the gate? Has that happened to you? If it hasn't, you're not alive. Right? This is something I've had to do in primary with people before. Okay, everybody raise one hand. Everybody, come on, everybody do it. Raise one hand. Okay, everybody raise your other hand and put them both up together. Okay, you all have fully functional arms, right? So should I ask a question and it applies to you, the appropriate response is to raise your hand. So I thought I'd just explain that. That was a medium-sized challenge. That was appropriate for the development of this group. No, I'm just kidding. So if we talk about right-sized challenges, right? So think about that. Like as a leader, how big is the nut you're giving somebody to crack? Right? Is it really within their wheelhouse? And the ideal challenge for people is one that is just a little bit bigger than they think they can take on, right? Is fantastic. And because if it's too simple, what happens? You get bored, right? And what happens when people get bored? They leave, right? Or they do stuff. When I get bored, I'm very good at solving my boredom problems. It just has negative consequences for everybody around me. So do not let me get bored. So right-sized challenges. The next piece of this is obvious, right? Which is if you're trying to help people attain mastery, you need to facilitate training, right? You owe it to them to provide appropriate training. This is a picture of one of the things I love in Ancestry's culture. We have an annual product summit, right? We get the whole product org, all of our product managers, all of our UX people, all of our dev leader partners, all of our marketing leader partners. We all come together. We spend a couple of days off-site. And we do a combination of team building and very practical skills, right? 2 years ago, we had a fantastic all-day-long workshop about what does it mean to have empathy as a product manager, and very concrete skills about what that means. And our CEO happened to be there, and he came back from that experience and was like, "Well, what about empathy?" I was every other word out of his mouth was empathy, and he started making completely different decisions than he had in the past. It was fantastic. He seems to have snapped back partway, but it was very effective on that. So it's the training aspect, right? The team building aspect. That's an obvious one. The second one, anybody know who that is, by the way? This is you're going to geek out if you know. Okay, a couple of you are willing to admit you're with me, right? This is Uncle Iro. How can you not know who he is? So Uncle Iro is. I won't give you the whole background, but he is a mentor, right? He is the ultimate mentor. And so that's the next part to mastery is anybody who wants to become a master needs a mentor. In fact, most people need more than one mentor to do that. You need mentors along the different paths of skills or dimensions that you want to follow. And so as a leader, you need to be very cognizant of how am I setting up mentorships? Am I the mentor? Is somebody else the mentor? Are there multiple mentors? How are you doing that? And then my intent is to go super deep on that, but I want to point out one thing, which is I believe that most people in their relationship with their mentor feel this way, right? Which is do it with me, not for me. And people that work for me, people work for me back there, they're going yeah, tell me about it. This is actually a pet peeve of mine. If I catch people misbehaving on this one, I have a very low tolerance for people doing things for people because it creates dysfunction, right? And people don't grow and they don't evolve. So, but doing it with me, it's fantastic. That's ideal mentoring, right? The do it with me mentality. The next piece in this is about feedback. And I've had some really great training situations and scenarios. I have a long track record of screwing this up that I've learned from. And so I want to give like pointers on the feedback thing that I've learned over time. So a couple of things that I think are obvious and some other things that I think are more subtle and like a little bit softer skills. So the first one is obviously feedback should be about the good and the bad, right? Like there should be a balance there. Everybody knows that. Although we don't always behave that way, but I think we all agree with that. The next one, this is more of a softer skill, which is if you're giving feedback to somebody, whether it's good or bad, you should always signal that it's coming. Right? Anybody know what I mean by that? By signal the feedback's coming? Let me give you an example of that. So I could go up to like Melanie Shook right here, who's on our team. I say, Melody, let's first start with a good feedback example, right? So I'm going to signal to Melanie that there's some good feedback coming. Melanie, I just want to tell you something that has really impressed me, right? So there's the signal. Oh, he's going to give me good feedback, right? And so what does that do, by the way, Melanie? I bet it even happened just now when I said it, even though we're pretending. That's right? Like you are in complete, like I've got your attention, right? And you're ready to receive the feedback and ready to go. Okay, and then I would say I just think it's fantastic that you just started, but you're willing to like come out here and spend 2 weeks on site instead of in San Francisco. Thank you. Right, so great feedback. So let me give you a signal on the negative side. So imagine you want to give somebody some hopefully constructive feedback, right? So some of my favorite ones, and by the way, I'll have to be careful. I don't want to like give away all my secrets because like, yeah, people work for me. They're like, oh, this will be interesting. Now I know what Dan's going to like. So that's fine because the intent is to signal that it's coming. So one of the things that I like to do to people, that was phrased weird. One of the ways I like to approach giving that signal is I'll approach somebody. I'll say, Brad, I need to tell you something that might be hard to hear. All right, what did that do to you when I just said that, Brad? Want to hear, right? That one works. Or if you think it's particularly hard feedback for somebody to receive, then what you're going to say is like, I'm going to go up to you and say, Valerie, I've been wanting to talk to you about something. I'm not sure how it's going to go. Can we just have a frank conversation? Right? And what will you say? You'll say, sure. And all of your senses are now like armed, right? But you've also given me permission. And what happens to a lot of people, not everybody, most people, when they hear that, they also flip into the, oh yeah, you think that's going to be hard for me to take? I can take it. Like I'll engage. I'm going to the person completely flips into this mode where they're like part of, not only like they flip to where I'm going to prove to you that I am willing to accept this feedback, right? Like it's one of the things that often happens with people. So a couple of tips. There's other things too. I don't want to give away my whole thing here in front of the team. I want to have some surprises still coming, but that's the second one or the third one there, right? Which is ask permission, right? Ask permission before you give that feedback, and people will grant you. Like I've never had somebody say, nah, I don't think I will. Everybody grants permission, but they also flip into a receptive state. Then the fourth one is very intuitive. I think like we get this, although we're like you'll have to analyze yourself. Do you do it? Is be specific. Right? Like don't be generic. And I should say, by the way, I'm not perfect at any of these things. I got called on the carpet 2 weeks ago by one of our VPs of engineering because I was complaining about, oh, your team always does this and that, whatever, like all these generalizations. He totally called me out. He's like, well, let's get specific now. And I was like, well, so which resulted in me sending an email to my team, hey guys, tell me all the times when this thing happened. Anyways, but be specific, right? Also be constructive, right? Another way to phrase that is don't whine. Don't complain. Like especially as a manager, right? Be constructive. Have a plan of this is how it can be different, or this is how you can evolve it. Be sincere. The place where sincerity is most often lacking is in the positive feedback. Right? People often feel that a lack of sincerity and positive feedback. You have to watch that. Like if you don't really feel that, like you probably shouldn't say it because they're going to detect that. Own the message. I've seen this a ton. People, when they are giving, especially when it's hard feedback to give, people want to have somebody else own that message, right? And they want to say, well, so-and-so was kind of, or I think that, the CEO, whatever, which ties into this last one. Let me come back to it. On owning the message, one of the interesting things about if you don't own the message, it actually teaches people that you're not in charge. That this other person who you're blaming it on, they're the one that really matters. Like you actually really disempower yourself. And then the final one is connect people. So if you are in this situation, a lot of managers, a lot of product managers, you deal with lots and lots of people. You get broad feedback. And so, if somebody comes to you and they say, hey, your engineering changed this, or this other product manager that, or whatever, like your best resource is actually say, hey, let's go talk to them. Like don't skip that. Like connect the people together, get people talking, be that facilitator of that. Way better than just like passing it on. Yep. Yeah. So let me give you one. So imagine that you have a product manager that is having a hard time making it to all their stand-up meetings, right? And that's an important part of your company culture, right? And imagine that like that had come to my attention, and then my director, who's their boss, like, so I go to that director and I'm like, hey, this person on your team, they're having this problem. This told me, can you, address that with them, right? Well, by the way, what you should do is you should connect those people together. But if it's a scenario where you're going to go do that, then by owning the message, like if that person on my team, they should go to that person. They shouldn't say, hey, Dan said that you probably need to work on this. Right? They should go and say, hey, it's come to my attention that you're struggling to make your stand-up meetings. Let's talk about that. Is there something I should be aware of? Okay, can we fix that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like, don't put it back on me. Own that yourself. That's what I mean by own the message. Okay, so just like some pragmatic things, soft skills about this feedback conversation. So this next one, that when it comes to mastery, a lot of times when people think about mastery and growth, they go really fast to this place of, if I'm a product manager and I'm growing and I'm getting mastery, that means that I'm going up the career ladder, right? That means that I'm getting promoted, and I'm a product manager, then I'm a principal product manager, then I'm a director of product manager, which there's some aspect of that, right? And we all hope to do that. But I guess the thing I want to point is that it's not the only dimension of growth. It's not the only dimension of mastery. And if you're leading product managers, this can be a real challenge, right? Because if you're a leader of product managers, you realize you can't make everybody a director of product management, right? And if you can't solve their need to advance, you're probably going to lose that person. And so these are examples. There are many more, but these are some examples of what are some other dimensions then to like redirect to fulfill that need for growth and for mastery and to go. So, for example, one of the things you can do is say, hey, well, it's kind of a combination of change of venue plus let's give you a chance to have a piece of the business that has more revenue or that addresses more customers, right? Like, let's grow your muscles that way, give you a bigger part of the pie. Another one is influence, right? Let's set you up to where you're mentoring more people, or let's set you up to where you're influencing a more critical part of the product, or maybe you're running strategy across multiple teams, or something like that. This next one down here, engineers and teams, is kind of thing, which is like, hey, like, can I have you be over a bigger set of engineering teams, or can I have you interface with more teams, or interface with more partners, or own more partner relationships, things like that. We talked about being mentored. So the point is that like there's a whole bunch of different dimensions that can fulfill the need for growth and be tangible progress in my career that aren't just about the career ladder, that will increase the likelihood of going up the career ladder. So some thoughts on that. Now I want to flip a little bit. Before I tell you what the topic of the slide is, I just want to ask this question. So you've got the two people in the slide. Which one of the people would you want to be if you're in this picture? Who do you want to be? The driver. Anybody not want to be the driver? Good, because you're all here at a product management conversation. You should want to be the driver. Product managers, by definition, want to be the driver, right? I actually think most people want to be the driver, right? Everybody wants to drive something. And so I want to flip to a little bit more of the conversation. We're talking about mastery. I want to flip to autonomy, right? Like, how do you provide autonomy? And one of the real challenges in a product management org, especially like the larger it gets, and sometimes you get layers in a product management organization or in a company. How do you provide autonomy in a layered organization? Has anybody ever felt the challenge of that? This is one of those times where you can raise your hand. Yeah, thank you. So, like it can be a real challenge sometimes. Like I get that feedback often. I shouldn't say often, but it's not uncommon, right? To hear feedback of, hey, I don't have any autonomy. I'm supposed to be in charge. Where's my autonomy? All right, what, in your experience, what leads to that feeling of I don't have autonomy? People overrun your decisions. Yeah, you make a decision and somebody backtracks on you, and you're like, I thought I was the one that could make this decision. Now you're telling me I can't, right? Any other thoughts? Yep. Yeah, so not giving you what you need to even make the decision to begin with, or sometimes also not even giving you the tools to go after the thing they've asked you to do. Yeah. Anthony. Yeah, oversight. If you have to have oversight approval every step, right? So there's lots of these negative things. If you're a leader, product managers, like you should be like looking in right now, like how am I doing on this? Some is hard though. Like some of this, we're a business. We do have leaders. Like how do we manage that? So I want to talk about that dynamic a little bit and give some thoughts. So this is what we've been talking about: is how do you maximize autonomy, especially in a layered organization or in a business organization. One thing that really I think works well or helps with this is focus on the outcomes, right, and provide autonomy on the how. So if you have somebody that you're working with, go to them and don't tell them how to crack this nut. Don't tell them, do this, build that, go whatever. Go to them and say, hey, the outcome that I want at the end of this time period or whatever is for you to add, another $5 million to our revenue. Or I want you to increase the customer satisfaction by this much. Or I want to, what is the outcome you're trying to get at? And then leave them the autonomy of how to get there, right? And then provide them with the resources to get there, right? So that dynamic tends to help a lot. You're basically carving out a place and saying, you know what? In this sandbox, you are the driver, right? Just know this, at the end of the day, after you've driven all around the sandbox, we need this outcome, and let them manage that. So that helps. We're not perfect at that, but that helps. Another thing, this is what we were talking about a little before, which is this whole, beware of meddling. And sometimes you can't control it. Sometimes the meddling comes from above you, but meddling is bad news. And I have a policy, my team knows this one, I have a 3 strikes and you're out policy. What I mean by that is I will give any manager 3 attempts. Anybody I work for, I'll give them 3 shots. You can come in and meddle in my world 3 times. But if you do it a 3rd time, we're probably done. And that's actually a very real conversation I have with my managers. I probably shouldn't say this kind of stuff, right? But because it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. And I remember I'm the guy who told my boss that I wasn't going to do his report. Maybe I haven't figured that one out yet, because I would have no problem, and I have, actually. You could ask my boss, Kendall Hewlett, you could ask him. I've had this exact conversation with him. And I told him, Kendall, that's strike 1. But then we had another conversation later on. I said, Kendall, you sure you want that? Because that would be strike 2. And by the way, he didn't force me there. I got there on my own. But he didn't force me there. So anyway, I have 3 strikes, and I've heard other things, by the way. We'll get down to this later. But so how do you deal with that, though? Because sometimes you really do need the org to go, organization, or you need a team to buy in, right? And you need to do it in a way where they don't feel like there's meddling. And the biggest enemy, by the way, is time, right? Sometimes you don't have the time to get people there. That's the hardest part. If you have time, though, shared context is what usually solves it, right? If you can all look at the same set of data, if you can all share the same context, most rational people will come to a fairly similar conclusion. So often shared context helps, which leads to the next one, which is let people get there on their own, right? Lead people to that conclusion, but don't force them to the conclusion. This one ties back to what I was saying before about owning the message, right? Which is don't blame superiors. So if I come in and say, hey, Tim works for me, Tim, and they're all smiling because they know that sometimes I'm not perfect at this one. But if I come in and I'm like, Tim, the CEO, Tim Sullivan, he says we got to do this. I'm sorry, we just got to go do that. All right. What does that do? Has that ever happened, Tim? I know it's happened. And he said, strike 1, Dan. It does happen, right? I try so hard to avoid that scenario because I have such a distaste for it. But what it does at that point, who's in charge? My boss, right? I'm not the product manager anymore. The guy above me is, right? That's what happens. So it's actually way better. Even if I disagree with it, it's way better for me as a leader to come in and not blame the CEO, but say, hey, let me give you some business context. Here's what we're going to have to do. Let's talk about that, right? And not blame it on somebody else. Way better approach. And then this last one's super critical, which is differentiate opinion from direction. You get in a lot of conversations as a leader where you're just saying what you think. You didn't mean thus it must be. Right? You're just giving your feedback. And so you need to establish with your team in your conversation some pattern of how they know the difference between opinion and direction. Josh Penrod, who works for us, fantastic UX leader, he has a 1, 2, 3 thing, which is his team knows that a 1 is, it's just, it's a thought. A 2 is, I feel a little bit about this, and I'd like to be part of the conversation. And a 3 is, what don't you understand about what I just told you, right? Like and he classifies his feedback to people. Brandon.
How far do you go saying, this is my opinion, but I'm.
Yeah, so the question was, how far do you go in giving your opinion, especially in that scenario where like maybe somebody above you is meddling, right? Somebody above you is saying, hey, this is the path we need to go down. Your opinion might be different. Like, how do you manage that dynamic? For me, it's very situational. Situational depending on the business context, depending on my relationship with the person that I'm working with, that kind of thing. So I'm not self-consistent in how I approach it. The things that help me navigate that, the first one is, one, by the way, most of the time when I'm giving an opinion, it has nothing to do with the person above me, right? So most of the time I'm not in that scenario. But when I am in that scenario, if I have a relationship with the employee where I feel like we have enough shared context and shared understanding, and I'm making a choice in my mind that I'm going to now come and be the friend of the employee and be like, hey, here's my opinion. I'm lamenting with you. It's going to help them emotionally to get past that decision point. Then I would probably share an opinion like that. If I felt it was going to help them get past the decision point and feel better about going there. Like sometimes your boss, who can also be your friend, having that kind of therapeutic feeling of, hey, we see this the same, but we're going to do it together. But you have to realize I lost power in taking that tact, right? Short of that, I probably wouldn't express that opinion. That's how I play. There's not a right or wrong. That's my style on that one. And I like to have conversations with people that work for me about, hey, you should always assume that anything I say is just my opinion unless I tell you otherwise. Right? And I try to honor that. So that's how I like to approach that, because the truth is 99.9% of the time, it really is just my opinion about something. And so I try to set that expectation up front. Okay, so this empowerment thing, I don't want to go deep on this, but I want to talk about another principle that I've seen in practice. How many of you have had your boss come into the room when you're running a meeting? Anybody have that happen? Remember, your arms work? Right? How many of you have your boss come into the room when you're running a meeting? Right? Like you're in charge, you're leading this thing, you come in and your boss comes in the room. Yeah, all my team's smiling at me again. Okay, what happens when your boss comes in the room in your meeting? Yeah, so the authority shifts. Tim says they're the magnet, right? And other thoughts about what happens? Depends on your relationship with your boss. Yeah. So and it depends on you, right? On how you choose to handle that. But one of the things that I learned when I first started leading product managers was that if I went into the room and if I started giving direction in the room, suddenly I became the product manager. And that team would forevermore come to me with their questions rather than to their product manager. And I lost leverage, right? Like there is a reason there's a product manager, because I can't manage everything, nor do I want to. And so that's just what I want to say about it, which is like that principle of empowerment, being very sensitive to the setting in which you give that direction. Like you can't give that direction in front of the team the person leads. You can't take over that meeting, or you're going to lose all your leverage. And think, Anthony. Yeah, so great point. So there can be a dynamic. The comment was there can be a dynamic where where if the product manager has a great relationship with that team, there's high trust there. The boss comes in and tries to override that. The team can actually lose trust in the boss and lose confidence in him. Be like, wow, that guy's weird. That could be detrimental too. So it's just a very sensitive dynamic in how you approach that. Moving past the autonomy, talk about purpose. But purpose is actually a challenging thing for most companies. Like most companies struggle to give their employees a strong sense of purpose of the mission of that company. Now, the Ancestry is super lucky that way because all of our products like make people cry and have these strong, powerful emotions or whatever. So we're lucky, and people at Ancestry like benefit because we have this super strong sense of purpose. But not every company can do that. But in the product management world, product managers tend to get their sense of purpose from customer empathy. Right? The thing that drives a product manager and helps them be fulfilled is when they have this aha, like, oh my gosh, the thing that we just delivered actually helps that customer. Like their pain is gone. Their life is better. It's working, it's succeeding. Like that's the biggest fulfillment for a product manager. Most of the time, some people are wired differently, but generally, that's where that sense of purpose comes from for a product manager. And so you need to recognize that, understand that, and pause, and celebrate that, and like experience that together because it'll deepen that sense of purpose. The place I want to pivot to next is to get back to this whole leading concept, right? So remember we talked about how great attributes of product managers sometimes make them hard to lead. So I want to talk, just closing out the conversations, final thoughts around just straight up leading product managers. So the first topic, and you guys probably see this, is one of your greatest tools in leading product managers is a shared vision. It's like if we can all just be on the same page and see the same thing, it creates more autonomy. It creates more kind of alignment across the org. It creates faster decision making because we all see the same end in mind. There's just huge benefits for shared vision. The follow-on to that is the best thing you can do to motivate a product management team is to let them create the shared vision. Like you'll never have a more highly motivated product management team than a team that has come together to build out a shared vision. They feel ownership in that. They're all aligned and driving toward that. You can't do that all the time. It tends to be an expensive process to do that, especially if you're going super deep. But the outcome of that, if you can do that once a year, once every 18 months, you will keep a very strongly aligned, focused product management team. The next piece of this I want to talk about, it ties back to we were talking about the outcomes, but I'm a huge believer in the concept of a scoreboard. Let me just ask you some questions about the scoreboard. So what game is this? Anybody know what game this is? Football game. Right? How do you know it's a football game? You can look at the score, you can see the downs, you can see the little football. What is that little football over there on your far right mean? They've got the ball, right? So that team's got the ball. So if you look at this, just think about this for a second. What insights do you derive from the scoreboard as you look at that? What do you know? It's a close game. Not much time left, but not much time left before halftime, right? So we're halfway through the game. Okay. What else do you know? You know the score? Oh, close to scoring. Yeah. Ball's on the 9-yard line, right? Yeah. So what's going to happen if they succeed on this play? Yeah, it could be a 20 or it could be a 19 or a 20 to 10 lead going into halftime, right? What would that like? How does that change the game? Yeah, right. So then if you think about this a little bit, what does it do for the team? Like if you're on this team, either team, right? If you're on either team, what does it do? Gives or takes away your momentum. The outcome of what's going to happen here will give or take away your momentum. What is like in the moment? Like what would this do? If you're on one of these teams, let's imagine you're on defense, right? So you're over here on the 10 side. You look up, you see that scoreboard. Derek. Yeah, so Derek says it's not time for a water break. You need to focus and stop, in this case, the first down. If you're on defense. Bob. Yeah, so you're pointing out what's going to happen to morale depending on the outcome of this play. So if you're a player and you know that, you're pushing hard to keep the morale in your favor, right? If you can stop this, you've got morale going into the locker room. If you can make it happen, you've got morale going into the locker room. Right now, we don't need to go super deep on this, but some of the things I want to point out is there's a ton that the team knows without the coach ever saying anything. Right? The coach doesn't have to come to them and say, "Hey guys, if you succeed on this, you're going to have morale going to the locker room. Right? Like, nor does he have to say, hey, you might want to stop this one. Right? He doesn't have to say that, right? And he doesn't have to say they're probably not going for the field goal. Right? Like the team knows all this, right? Because they know the scoreboard and they can see it. And it communicates almost everything they need to know at this instant in the game to know how to behave. Right? Brad. Yeah, so the question is, what are some of the things that are important to have on a scoreboard for the product management team? I come back to the outcome, right? Which is, so the way I look at it is, what is the outcome you're trying to get? And then what are the most important metrics which are predictive of that outcome? Everything on the scoreboard is predictive of the outcome of this game. That's why it's there. And so the scoreboard you should have in front of you, it depends on the outcome. I'll give you an example. Last year, in 2015, we were doing this big migration. We had built a whole new Ancestry.com website, new look and feel, features, capability. The nature of our users, they're hugely resistant to change. And it was a very hard managed transition over that point in time. One of our key metrics that we had a dashboard around was on any given day, we could, in fact, within 10 minutes intervals, we could tell you exactly how many people had opted into the new experience and had opted back out. Right? That was like a key metric of our success, was how many people were in and staying in versus how many people were coming out. And we took it further because we knew that we had a goal by a certain point in time of the year to get to a certain percentage of our users were in and staying in. And we actually plotted that graph. And so we had a plan versus actual on how many people were in. And when we started getting below the line, we adjusted our tactic, right? Are we below that line because people don't like the experience? Are we below the line because we're not giving enough people the opportunity to opt into the experience, right? But it was all constantly in front of us. And we actually got ahead of that line, and we did fantastic. But we never would have been able to do that had we not constantly had that scoreboard in front of us. And the team knew constantly what they should do today based on the scoreboard. Yep. So the question was, do we have it on a big screen where everybody can see it all the time? That particular one, we didn't have on a big screen. It was like on our, like it was available to anybody that wanted to go look at it. We do have scoreboards that we keep up. For example, a very important theme for us currently is the availability of our website. If we weren't doing this presentation, these monitors would have our current availability on them, our scoreboard around availability of the website. And so and then our teams tend to have big display monitors where they can put their dashboards up. I will say this though, like Ancestry is not perfect at this. In fact, I think we're developing this muscle. I don't think we're effectively using the concept of a scoreboard or dashboard to the level that we should. But I will tell you, like in my experience in leading people, this creates alignment, it creates autonomy, it speeds up decision making. Like if you get the right dashboard, like the team can go and they can make their own choices and make their own decisions without being lots of oversight. So like I'm a huge fan of this. I probably went longer on it than I meant to because of that. But that's something to think about, which is, do you have the right? The other warning I'll give you is if you have the wrong dashboard, the team will go wrong after the wrong thing. Or they'll go hard after that wrong thing, and you'll really screw yourself up. So super important to get them right. Or even worse is if you have the right dashboard with the wrong information. So imagine that they made a mistake, and these guys actually were 13, those guys were 10, and nobody noticed that, but they were playing as if that was true. Right? They would make some very bad choices leading up to halftime. So that happens. Or if you can't rely on the dashboard, if the information is flaky, you don't know what to do. Okay, so the next piece to this, and we're super close to the end, the next piece on this is about rhythm. So if you're leading teams, if you're leading product managers, the rhythm is super important. Like a cadence of execution, predictability on when you will do what, and just a pattern of how we execute, super important, right? So those patterns of, you see them in like daily stand-ups, you see them in 2-week sprints, you see them, but what, as a product leader, and you with your product management team, if you lead a product management team, what is your cadence of execution, right? Like, what is the rhythm you've set up for that team that helps them to know how to predictively go and execute and report back, like that sets with those expectations. If you can establish a strong cadence of execution like that, again, speeds up decision making, speeds up autonomy. People can go and act and know when the right time is to come back. Like all those things can happen if you have a really good cadence of execution. There should be an intentional, crafted, chosen plan on your part of how you're going to have the cadence. The thing I'll tell you is that speeding up and slowing down the cadence is appropriate. Like there are times where if you are starting something new, if the team is struggling to get a concept, the cadence should be much faster, much more frequent. Right? Once the team has gained skill and mastery and is doing better, the cadence can be less frequent, right? So like you can use that cadence. The way I think about it, and I wrote a blog post once about this, forgive me, but I loved riding motorcycles. There's a thing in a motorcycle in the engine that has a gyroscopic effect. Basically what that means is the faster that engine turns around, the more stable the bike is. And so a motocross rider would say something like this: when in doubt, give it more throttle. Right? What they're saying is increase the rhythm. If you think you're not going to make it through a corner, you should give more gas. Right? If you which is counterintuitive, right? But it's the same thing in a product environment and a business environment. The more unstable you are, the faster your rhythm should be to try and counter that until you get it under control. So the last piece that I will tell you that for me as a leader is super important, super critical, is I don't directly build product anymore, right? Like I don't touch stuff. I have teams of people that do that, but I'm still at heart a product manager. And the way I view my world is that the org around me is my product. My sense of fulfillment comes from seeing the pain and the problems of my organization fixed. My sense of fulfillment comes from seeing the people that work for me grow and develop and become better and stronger. It comes from seeing the capacity and the capability of the organization grow. Right? So I still take very much a product focus even to the organization. And as you as a product leader, that can be another dimension of growth, another dimension of purpose and fulfillment. So that's what I had planned for tonight, that whole kind of thing, a little bit different approach on some thoughts about product management. Any questions or comments before we call our quits for tonight? Yeah, so the question is, I'll say a little more succinctly. The question is, are there pros and cons between letting an individual select their mentor, or you as an individual selecting your mentor versus having somebody else assign the mentor to you? To me, it goes back to that conscious competence thing. Right? If I'm unconsciously incompetent, I probably don't know who my best mentor should be. In that scenario, it might be good to kind of direct that at first to get them through the channel there. But if you're past that, it's probably way more appropriate to let you have kind of skin in the game. You have a perspective. You know kind of what you need a little bit, and so I'd be a much stronger advocate for doing that. And it can be a combination of both. Like for me in my career, I'm very intentional about picking my mentors, right? And sometimes those are specific conversations where I'm actually asking somebody, "Will you mentor me?" Other times I've just chosen this is somebody that I'm going to kind of keep my eye on, and I'm gonna be mentored by them, even though I've never told them that. So it just depends on the scenario of how I approach it. But with my teams, though, it's like, hey, like the classic scenario, somebody just started. We're going to make sure they have a mentor to kind of get up to speed. But people who are more along the path, it's more of a combination. Where you're trying to learn, where you're trying to do, where can you get that help, and let them kind of pick that a little bit. So I use a combination. Other questions or comments, thoughts? Melanie? Right. So Melody's comment was just as important as a mentor is to have an advocate, somebody who can help you fight the battle, somebody who can promote the message, who can communicate maybe what you can't communicate or influence what maybe you can't influence. I didn't butcher that, did I? Okay. Other comments, questions, Brandon? When is the relationship broken? When do you terminate the relationship? I'm actually dealing with one of those at present, but I think to me the relationship is broken when the respect is gone. Right. So if respect is gone, trust is gone, and there's not a path to getting it back, then it's probably time to part ways. But I look at it like if there is a chance that the respect can come back or the trust can come back, I would give that a shot. When I feel like there's not a chance anymore, I'm most likely, and that's a very high level generalized thing. Like we could be more specific in specific scenarios. But for me, it comes down to that. And that's a style thing for me. I am willing to give people a lot of leeway and a lot of opportunity if I can. Sometimes I can't, right? So like sometimes the dynamics of the business force my hand to change something. But if I have a chance, I go until trust and respect are gone. Yeah. Yeah. So in a mentoring business, I don't know if you're speaking specifically about a mentoring relationship or just generally. I was speaking more generally, but in a mentoring relationship, yeah, like sometimes you've learned what you're going to learn, right? And so it's not that the relationship stops, but the mentoring aspect of that changes. Yeah. Yeah. So the question was, as a product manager, you deal with a lot of people, and I'll shorten a little bit. A lot of people who do not have a HR reporting relationship to you, but you need to influence. You need to get them aligned and do something. How important is that? How do you deal with that? Whatever. What I would say is it is everything in product management. Product management is completely a game of influence. I'll take it a step further though, and I will say for me personally, it's actually everything and everything. That's the way I like to work with the people that work for me, right? Like nobody likes positional power. It never feels good. It's the meddling, right? Like for me, like as soon as I get to a point where influence is no longer the game, I'm in trouble, right? I'm starting to lose. I'm starting to the relationship starting to fall apart, and so I prefer to never have power come from anything other than influence if I can. There's a book that goes really deep into kind of different types of power steps called the Power Principle, which really teases out if you're interested in deeper learning on that. Other thoughts or questions, Vicki? Yeah, so the question is, as the product team starts to grow, how do you think about structuring the team so you still preserve the autonomy, but the business can grow quickly, you can still have the dynamic. And so that to me, the increment of growth for a product team is usually coupled with the growth of with the engineering organization, right? So if you add an engineering team, there needs to be a product manager that can work with that engineering team. Now, depending on what you're doing, sometimes a product manager can span multiple engineering teams, but that's where the breakpoints are for me. So as the engineering team grows, I need to keep that alignment with the product team. And so, which means you need a very tight relationship with engineering leadership, so you're always having that conversation. And so that's the first point of alignment. Then the next question is like, how do you form like kind of these umbrellas? Like, when do you form a new team? And how do you do that leadership structuring thing? To me, it is about product and business architecture, right? So what is the thing I'm trying to build? Because if I put a dividing line between parts of what I'm trying to build, that will show up in the product, right? And so I try to be very intentional in the organizational architecture. So I'll give you an example. We did a reorganization earlier this year. And in that reorganization, one of the things we did is we took our team that was responsible for funnel optimization, like early conversion, getting people signed up into a free trial on Ancestry, and we combined it with the team that was responsible for the experience you have during that free trial on Ancestry. Because what was happening is that people would get in the funnel, and the funnel team was very effective at getting people to sign up. But then they just threw them off a cliff, and the customers, it's like the customers are driving along, and then all of a sudden just woo, like now I'm in this whole new world. I have no idea what to do, right? And the solve for that was combine those teams under the same leadership and force them to deal with the cliff. And they're doing that. They're thinking, oh, it's not sufficient just to get somebody to sign up. I actually have to get them to want to build through and stay as a customer, right? So now sometimes you can't do that on one team. So that's when you then need to go up another level, right? Sometimes when the scope of what you're doing is too big for one team to do that with, that's when you have to say, okay, we're two teams, and now we've got somebody over those two teams. Their responsibility is that umbrella. Right? So to me, it's very driven by the architecture of the outcome I'm trying to get in the product. If I can, sometimes you get constrained. It's never a perfect world, but that's my primary driver, as well as the talent I have. Sometimes you don't have the talent to do what you want. But other thoughts, questions, and we'll wrap up probably with just a couple more questions. Yep. So this is going to be old school. The question was, what is the best book or resource that has helped me in product management? I'll say the thing has been most formative in my mind about my thoughts around product management is actually a methodology. There's a book and a methodology called Delivering Profitable Value. It's going way back, but if you read that book, you will find that all of the current new thinking about product management is in that book that was written 30 years ago. That's one thing. The second piece that has been super influential for me is a discipline called contextual inquiry and contextual design. Which is very deep ethnographic research type approach. There's lots of ways to simplify it, and so you can go super deep and expensive, or you can go lightweight and learn faster, but not as deeply sometimes. A lot of the current stuff that you see right now, like design thinking that MIT is, made theirs, is actually just a ripoff from contextual inquiry and contextual design with some nice add-ons. It's not a complete ripoff. Like they've actually enhanced it. It's better, but it's grounded in that thinking. So those are the two schools of thought that have been most influential to me. There are others, but those have had big impact. One more question or comment if there's anything else. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, do we find that product managers have challenges running teams that are not co-located, right? Teams that are geographically disparate, and if so, like what are skills that help and improve with that? They do, right? I actually find that there are product managers that are actually really, really good at that, and then there are product managers that really struggle with that. The product managers that are really, really good with that have a much tighter communication loop with the people not co-located with them. And they have not just daily, but multiple times a day interaction, conversation to bridge that gap. And I've actually seen teams, like we have a team here that works for us. When they are in this mode where they need high conversation, they keep a Slack channel open 24/7 with everybody in the team watching. And so conversation is very real time through that. So it's all about the rate of conversation, the fidelity of conversation to bridge that gap. The biggest strain on that is if the co-location is such that the time zones are so far off that is hard to accomplish. But if the time zones aren't that far off, somebody who's willing to just communicate, be constantly available can make it work. Okay, well, I want to honor everybody's time. Thank you so much for coming, being here with us. Thank you again, Brandon. Any parting shots? We're good? Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And please, if there's more pizza, go get it. We may have a gift. I heard we had a gift for you guys on the way out. I don't know. Look and see if there's something that looks like a